Welcome back to The Garbage Reel. I'm joined by my co-host, Sam Orsino.
Hey folks, how we doing?
Today we're going to be talking about the 2008 action movie Speed Racer, but it's going to be a different structure episode. First, we're going to start with a bit of a story, and this story is about how this became the most hated movie in my house that never stopped playing. So I played Speed Racer almost every chance I could, from road trips, at home, anytime I could, and my family grew so tired of it so fast. And it's a longer than usual kids movie because most of them are around an hour and 20 minutes, hour and 30 minutes. And this one is about 2.5 hours. And it was extremely difficult for them to convince me to watch anything else when I was obsessed with this movie. And now, long since I've grown out of it, whenever I bring this movie up or anybody brings this movie up, they always immediately go back to how I couldn't stop watching this every time. And every time this movie gets brought up, they all groan in just disgust. And so with that, I still do love this movie. I really do. I think it's a great movie. Critically, it was not well received. So it was written and directed by the Wachowski sisters. They are known for all of the Matrix movies and the comic book movie V for Vendetta. So the budget for this movie was an estimated around $120 million. Its opening weekend gross was about $18.5 million. It's all right. And the worldwide gross 93.9, so bit of a failure in that. No profits. The cast includes Emile Hirsch as Speed Racer, Matthew Fox as Racer X/Rex Racer, John Goodman plays Pops Racer, Susan Sarandon plays Mrs. Racer, Christina Ricci plays Trixie, the love interest, and Roger Allam plays Royalton, the British almost Trump-like figure.
Yeah.
That's the villain of the movie. And he's great. So what did you think about the movie?
So the overall thoughts, I don't know how it was rated this bad. Like, whenever I rewatched it, I haven't seen it since I was a kid after it came out. And watching it back, we watched Spy Kids 3 recently and talked on the pod about that. And
that
this
was
is
not great.
Night and day difference.
Yeah.
Close in time frame, but the CGI was next level. CGI rivals with what I feel today as some of the best stuff, especially for being in that time frame, early 2000s.
Yeah,
so,
anytime they're in the races, because all of the races are extremely high tech and high like sci-fi type style, and this CG is
so
beautiful.
good.
For
it
2008,
so
it's
good.
very good.
I love it. And
Yeah.
I was watching the movie and I was like, this looks like it recently came out, other than some things we'll get into a little later.
Yeah, anytime they're not in a race, the CG is iffy, if not just outright awful. But yeah, it's almost like they took an anime, which this is based on an anime from the 60s, but it's almost like they took an anime from like today's time, all that crazy action stuff, and just moved it straight to live action and just didn't change a thing.
I know.
And it works. It really does.
It does.
So this movie, when it came out, it was critically just hated. Everybody rated it awful. And in the last 10 or so years, it's gained a lot of goodwill online, especially on Twitter, IMDb, Rotten Tomatoes, stuff like that. It's climbed back up on those ratings from when it first came out. It's considered a heavy cult classic.
I love it. Looking back, I'm going to show this to my kids. I hope they show it to their kids to show. I love this movie, and it just brings so much. Like, it just reminds me of my childhood. Like, I grew up in a rural area. We didn't have, like, obviously not geared towards racing like this, but I did motocross, and this is kind of along those lines with how they did all of their stunts and races. But I just know, growing up loving cars, especially, like, Cars the movie, like, this was up there.
This is just another level.
Yeah. It's like Cars on steroids. And it was like something, if I didn't rewatch it, I don't know if I would ever have watched it again other than for this pod. And let me tell you, it's gonna be rewatched a couple times now.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And we've talked about the races are just amazing. The cars look great, but the characters, they're kind of playing it a little over the top. They're real goofy in how they're portraying each character. And I mean, they've got John Goodman, Susan Sarandon, and Matthew Fox. Matthew Fox at the time was doing really well, but John Goodman and Susan Sarandon are just giving heat checks left and right. Like they're just giving it their all in this movie, and it really went underappreciated. I really
It did. I think they did very well.
Mm-hmm.
Like if we compare it to those other movies that were in the early 2000s, such as like the Spy Kids series,
Mm-hmm.
like they try and flirt with like the goofy, serious, like more goofy side,
Yeah.
and it just doesn't work. Whereas this is like, you know, they do have some like serious talks in this movie, and they do very well.
And those
portraying
serious
it.
talks, they hold up even to now. Like it's not like these ones that could only be interpreted for a kids movie. Like it's actually kind of serious and heavy messages that even adults can
Yeah,
understand.
it is, especially whenever
Like there's a lot of talk about corruption in
Yes.
racing. That's a big plot point
It
in
is
the movie
huge.
with the conflict.
and it's huge in real life too.
It
So
is,
it's not
yeah.
just like a lot of these things and issues are kind of transversable with today's society, especially.
And especially about how what just like the levels of change and things that one person can do just by doing what they truly know how to do.
And it's definitely a learning experience for like the soon to be dads and the dads that are already out,
Mhm.
because he talks to his first son.
Very good father-son relationships.
Yes.
Very different ones and very good ones.
So his first son, I'm blanking on the name for some reason.
Rex.
Rex.
Yes.
He let him walk out the door, and
Very tumultuous, and
It
not-
was-
they kind of ended on a very, very bad
On a
thing.
bad
Like they
note.
just never talked again. And then his brother dies. He dies.
Dies.
Yes. Spoilers for the
Dies.
movie if you haven't seen it. Rex Racer dies in this kind of like backcountry cross country race,
Yeah.
and we do find out later he faked his own death, and it's a whole thing because there's a huge criminal aspect in this movie
Yes,
too.
there
There's
is.
a lot of
There's a lot of gangsters.
I
There's a
like
lot
it
of-
a lot. Mhm.
yeah, and they do the whole piranha scene. I love that scene with
Yeah.
the whole gangsters. The whole having your own office.
In
In
the
a
back of like
semi?
an 18-wheeler.
Yeah.
It's so cool. And that 18-wheeler has just missiles where the engine should be.
Yeah.
It's
I
so
thought it was
cool.
so fun.
Yeah. So we're going to get into the categories today. And so the categories are the same as they always are. We've got the best quote, the best performance, the worst performance, the most crazy, outlandish / kind of our favorite scene, what's aged the best, what's aged the worst. So like looking back on this movie now, what seems better and what seems just like, oh, we shouldn't be talking about this or almost glorifying this, and who won and who lost the movie, who comes out looking the best and who comes out looking the worst. So moving to the best quote, I have two because I mean this movie's they sprinkle them in, but they are some banger
Yeah.
quotes.
Yeah.
So the first one I have is from Rex Racer or Racer X, and he's talking to Speed because Speed is getting kind of disillusioned about racing because he finally sees like it is very corrupt. He says, "You don't climb into a T180 to be a driver. You do it because you're driven," and it's
Fire.
so good.
It's so good.
And the other one is between Pops and Speed Racer. And this one, I think, sums up their relationship extremely well and how Pops has grown since he had his falling out with Rex. Pops says, "You think you can drive a car and change the world? It doesn't work like that." Speed responds, "Maybe not, but it's the only thing I know how to do, and I gotta do something." Those are just perfect lines. In a kid's movie, too, it's like, it's so great to watch these movies now and hear things like that they went over my head when I was a kid, but now
Yeah.
it's just they hit you like a bag
Yeah.
of bricks.
They do. All right, my best quote was between Trixie and Pops, and a little context between this was they are doing a cross-country race, as we talked about, and they are in this hotel between races, and where Pops is against this, but he kind of came because, you know, he's proud of his son and everything. And so there was hired assassins, ninjas, to come in and take out some of the racers.
Take out Speed and his crew,
Yes.
essentially, his other drivers.
Yes. And it becomes a huge scene where you have like 2 ninjas or 3 ninjas come at all the racers. And then there's one ninja trying to kill Speed. And then the whole family basically gets into this fight. And then the dad comes in and you see he's like a black belt.
And he
in
saves the
something.
day
Yeah, he
and throws
saves
out the
day.
window.
And Trixie says, "Was that a ninja?" Whereas Pop goes, "That's not a ninja. That's a nanja. Terrible what passes for a ninja these days."
It is, yeah, that's a good
I
one.
stopped dead in my tracks watching this movie, and I laughed so hard. That was the funniest thing. I've heard in that whole movie. I was trying to keep my eye out for those best quotes.
Yeah, but
As soon as he says that,
that's a good one. That was probably
I-
my favorites as when I was a kid.
I loved it so much.
Yeah.
It was my favorite.
And so now to the best performance. I have two again.
Of course you do.
I do. I mean, there's so many good things about this movie. I love this movie to death. But so the first one is Royalton, the villain, because when he comes in, he's very charismatic. He's kind of fun, like not fun, but he wants speed and he seems very loving. And you kind of suspect like there's got to be something
Yeah.
else. You can't just be like this.
Can't get this rich without a little dark side.
Yeah. And when he turns, he has a whole like argument with Speed about like the corruption in racing, and
All the races are fixed
Yeah.
and all this and that, and puts doubt in Speed's mind. That's for sure.
yeah. And when he's delivering these lines, it's almost like a continuous shot on him for like 3 straight minutes, and he is just belting off these lines with amazing
He's doing
performances.
very well.
Because he gets increasingly mad as he gives off these lines, and every time it gets louder and louder and more scary as he does it.
And you can see the fear in Speed's eyes too.
Yeah.
When they pan back, like he's shook.
But I think he's a very good villain in this movie because he does go from that like, oh, like come on, come in, I'm gonna help you, I'll help you become a great driver. You'll be one of the greats one of the greatest of all time, and then he just flips on him instantly like that. And then in the Grand Prix, the final race, he's just losing his mind, just throwing things everywhere, and it's perfect for that character. And so my other performance was the parents. So John Goodman and Susan Sarandon, we already talked about this. They're just like hitting for the fences in this movie. John Goodman is playing Pops Racer amazingly. I mean, we don't see the 20 years in between Rex and Speed growing up from Rex's argument to Speed's, but you can just tell he's grown so much from realizing his mistakes with how he raised Rex to how he wants to raise Speed, and you can just tell he wants to do any way to keep Speed close to him. And the mom too plays it amazingly because we never really saw her arguing with Rex. I don't ever know if she did. But when Speed thinks about leaving just as Rex did, she's very caring. She says like, when you drive, it's like art. I love watching you do it. It's almost like you're painting, and it's a great.
That was
little
almost
monologue.
my best quote.
It's very good.
She delivered that so well.
How about your best performance?
So my best performance was Speed. He just did such a good job of like, even just in the racing scenes, I know it's CGI in the background and everything, but he does so well. One of my favorite scenes of his acting is whenever he's in the last race, the Grand Prix, where he's in the car and he's got to like calm down, focus up,
Listen to the car.
listen to the car. And he's just, he hits every note.
He does. Emil Hirsch is a very good actor. He's in another movie. His other like biggest movie was this one called Into the Wild, based on a book of the same name, and he's very, very good in that movie.
Yeah,
that
he
one
did-
brought me to tears.
He did very good.
Yep. So the worst performance for me was Sparky, his like manager,
I love
engineer.
Sparky. I don't know.
I don't know. I've never liked him. Like ever since I first watched this movie, I just didn't really.
Yeah.
It's hard to explain for me just why I don't like him, but it's just he never really did anything special. I thought he's just kind of there.
Yeah. I thought he did pretty well, to be honest. The one scene with Sparky that I did like was whenever he was tuning up the car before the big Grand Prix race, and they had a
Little pep talk. He's like the cockpit's the same size as Thunderhead or something.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then Speed and him had a very heartfelt moment.
Yeah.
My worst performance was the gangsters' henchmen.
Yeah.
They were just
I mean,
they're
very
trying to be like Dumb and
cartoony.
Dumber.
Yeah, but it just doesn't work.
It just didn't work, and it's like you had a lot of your main cast pull off really incredible roles and performances, and then you have like these idiots, like absolute like you can have like serious gangster henchmen that are joking.
It's too dumb.
Yeah, it's a little too far past what I thought the movie should have went down.
Yep.
But I still think like the head gangster did a pretty good job, and but it was just the henchmen, man. They were just ugh.
So moving on from there is the crazy favorite scene. So mine is the Grand Prix, which is the final race in this movie. It's like 20 minutes long. It's the climax of the movie, and it's perfect. Just everything. He starts out in dead last and brings it up, and he gets almost taken out of the race. And then his car is like sitting there dead in the water. and I don't know how many laps are in this race. I think it's at least 3 we saw. We were assuming more, but he's having to listen to his car, as you said earlier, and he turns on this like nuclear engine inside of his car that apparently he somehow knows how to turn on, and just zooms around the track as fast as he can. And when it's happening, you're just seeing streaks of his taillights.
The light trails were insane.
Amazing.
They were so good.
And you're seeing not flashbacks, but like floating heads of like his mom talking to him about how she loves to watch him race, or like the conversation he had with Pops before he left to go drive in the Grand Prix. It's just like the reasons for why he's racing, like why he's doing this to
all the
change
impactful
the world.
moments.
That scene,
good.
it almost gets me every single time, dude. It's so good.
It is. All right, my best scene. So I have 2. I loved whenever they did the Grand, or not the Grand Prix, the cross country race.
Those are really good.
The ending, there was just so many race scenes that was like, it's like what you dream of as a kid, and it's like what Fast and Furious tries to do and can't do.
Yeah, so they're in like a team of 3. It's Speed, Racer X, who he doesn't know at this time is his brother. He never does, actually. It's very sad to me. And then this other driver, Teja Tobakan, who like is like the team leader essentially. But they go in, it's like a series of 3 cross-country races. They're all really dangerous. Like nobody plays by the rules to get a ticket to the Grand Prix. And I mean, it's, I think we see 2 of the races, maybe might be only 2, but they are very, very cool because there's some pretty intense action scenes. Like Speed almost gets thrown. He does get thrown off a mountain and then he drives back up.
We'll get to that part. Don't worry. We'll get to that part.
That's a very interesting scene.
But the other one was the opening scene whenever he's in school, because that was me as a child. I'm making car noises. I'm dreaming. I'm driving everywhere. It's just one of like the most like relatable and like just like fun little, and how they did the animation with it. It was like cartoon animation where it was like basically hand drawn and not looking like professional, but looking like a child. And it did very good. Like it brought me back, especially in that opening scene where I was like, I'm dreading watching this movie because it's going to be horrible. And then that pops up and you're like, okay, I see where it's going. And then it just keeps rising after that and keeps getting better.
Yeah. Okay, so moving on from there, we're going to the age the best and age the worst. So my age the best is like high class, extremely expensive motor racing, becoming like, it's obviously like the dominant sport in America, it seems like there. And with like other sports like F1, IndyCars, like their popularity is like on the rise in America dramatically. So how about your age the best?
My age best was the CGI. I loved it. We talked a little bit about this earlier of how the CGI compares to stuff today that I haven't really seen. If we're talking about like the Grand Prix with the light trails,
anytime in the races, it's top tier.
It's so good. And I was just really taken away because it's earlier 2000s and it was just very well done.
Yeah. So my age the worst kind of goes off of that. My age the worst is any backdrop or background CG. It's almost atrociously bad.
Mine too.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to agree with you because even in like the after the opening scene, he runs outside and it looks like
there's like cars going by and it looks like
Cartoon World. Yeah. It's like Mickey Mouse Playhouse. And I'm like, ugh.
So for who won and lost the movie, again, that's like who comes out looking the best and who comes out looking the worst. So for who won the movie for me, it's a bit of an interesting one. I have the movie because in the long run, years after this movie, it's become a cult classic. Like I said, it's very well loved on places like Twitter and things like that. And it's very enjoyable to watch.
This kid's saying the whole movie. Come on. My one that, see, mine goes a little more on the joking side. I thought Chim Chim and Sprite Hole won the movie. They were so funny. They were the comedic relief. I enjoyed all of their scenes.
Chim Chim and Sprite Hole. So Chim Chim is a monkey, a chimpanzee, like a pet monkey they have, and Sprite Hole is Speed's younger brother by about 10 years.
Which I don't understand how their family's pumping out babies like that. They're like 10 years apart on each kid.
And Pops does not age.
He doesn't. But, you know, I mean,
but it is a kids movie.
Yeah, it is. But they did so good, and I loved all their scenes.
Mm-hmm.
They killed it.
So who lost the movie now? So for mine, I have the Wachowskis, the writers and directors. This is just in the middle of a string of bad movies. Obviously the first Matrix movie is very good. The second one isn't bad, but everything after that, it's just not good. Like they really are awful. And then even after this, they have a few more directorial efforts, and they're just kind of like these mid-budget sci-fi movies that were just critical and commercial flops. And they really haven't directed much since. I think one of them directed the newest Matrix movie, and even that was not well liked.
Yeah.
So how about yours?
It was Racer X not telling his family.
Oh, I love that. It's so tragic to me.
It is so. It's like it's at the end of the movie. Let's wrap it up. It's a kids movie. Is there gonna be a sequel? No. Just tell your family.
Yeah.
And he doesn't. And it's one of those things that's like so shocking because he gets asked at the end.
Yeah, it's after Speed wins the Grand Prix, and we see someone ask him, "Do you want me to bring you down to meet or to celebrate with them?" And he's like, and he thinks about it, and we see almost a montage of what happened, where he blows up his own car.
Watches his funeral. It was the
from afar.
detector saying, "Do you regret the choice you made?"
Yeah, and then we see all that, and we see him like go through full reconstructive surgery on his face, and I think it's heartbreaking.
It is
because he realizes like, I can't do that because I'll destroy any trust I've made as Racer X and anything they felt about Rex since his death, and I have to live with that.
Yeah,
and it kills.
It
him.
was so impactful. It was one of those like just crazy scenes where it's like, wow,
it really hits hard.
Yeah,
and it hits hard now.
Yeah, and that's the thing. That's the like whenever I thought of this movie, I thought of him going through all that. I remember that end scene. As like one of the biggest things because I think it was the most traumatic for me because I was like, just tell your family.
Yeah. So I think that'll wrap it up for us here at the Garbage Reel. Thank you so much for listening. This will be up on Apple Podcasts and YouTube on Wednesday, October 4th, I want to say.
I think it's the 5th.
The 5th?
Yes.
Yep. So just look up the Garbage Reel anywhere you get your podcast on Apple or Google or YouTube, and you'll find us. So thank you very much for watching.
Thanks, guys.
And we'll see you next time.